Hi, everyone. I'm Nina Collins from Revel. This is an event that we are co-producing with our partners at Kindra. So even though Kindra is not a panelist here and doesn't have cannabis products yet, maybe one day, they think this is an important subject for women going through menopause. And I'm really grateful to them for supporting this event. The title is Cannabis and Menopause. The way this is going to work is we have members right now. We have 24 people in the audience. The room will fill up. People in the audience are very welcome to write questions in the chat. I'm going to be talking to Kerrigan and Suzanne and people, and it's kind of a free-flowing conversation about the use of cannabis in menopause. And then this will get released as our podcast, Raging Gracefully, which goes out every Friday. So Kindra is, Dr. Suzanne Gilberg-Lenz, who I know quite well because we've both been in the menopause space for a while, is a Kindra medical advisor and OB-GYN based in California. She's an integrative medicine expert and the author of the upcoming book, The Menopause Bootcamp, which is coming out in October from HarperCollins. And I will put a link to that book in the chat. And we'll be talking about that book a lot because I'm sure it's going to be really great and I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, Nina.
And Kerrigan Behrens, I've never met before. She's the co-founder and co-CEO of a consumer wellness brand called Sagely Naturals. I'll also put a link to that in the chat. Most recently, Kerrigan guided her team through an acquisition by a company called Hemp Fusion, expanding the brand's of ingestible offerings that they have with gummies, and they launched a non-CBD infused product collection in Target under the Sagely Naturals umbrella. We have to learn more about that because I've never heard of Sagely Naturals, and I'm super excited, and I'm a big Target shopper. As are probably many of us. So welcome. And today is 420. We thought we were being funny by having this event on 420. So, all right. So my first question is for Kerrigan. What's the difference between CBD and THC? How is CBD different from marijuana? I know this is very 101, but I think it's an important question to keep asking because what I know is that CBD doesn't get you high and THC does, but yeah. I don't really understand, like people talk about the cannabinoid system and how it's in your body. And I found myself in the middle of the night scratching my head. I was like, what does that even mean? Like no one in high school taught me about a cannabinoid system. Like, is that true? Or is it,
It's real. Yeah. So taking a step back, the plant species is Cannabis Sativa, and Cannabis Sativa encompasses both hemp and marijuana. They're essentially the same plant. There's a legal definition though, and the legal distinction is that hemp has to contain less than 0.3% THC. So why you can buy Sagely Naturals products at your local CVS, and why you don't have to buy it at a dispensary is because we use compounds that come from the hemp plant and not the marijuana plant. Many people in the industry object to the phrase marijuana at this point because they think that it's actually kind of denigrating. But I still use it because I think it's confusing to call marijuana cannabis since hemp is also cannabis. So starting there.
I see. Okay. So wait, one question then. So if hemp products are less than 0.3% THC, do hemp products ever get you high in any way?
No. I mean, you would have to take a lot of a cannabinoid derivative from hemp in order to feel any kind of psychoactive effects. But to answer a couple of your other questions, a cannabinoid is just a compound that comes from the cannabis plant, and THC and CBD are the best known cannabinoids, but there are actually over 100. So what's super cool about the plant is that there are all of these compounds that do different things, and we're really sort of just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what these compounds can do for you. And then THC and CBD, they each have many benefits. The one that you mentioned, which is the best known, is that THC has these psychoactive effects, CBD doesn't. CBD can help with things like anti-inflammatory benefits, antioxidant benefits. It's an antispasmodic. It also does not make you hungry, Whereas THC, obviously known for the munchies, it is actually an appetite stimulant. And it does many other things as well that CBD doesn't do. So CBD does not help with nausea, whereas THC does. So it's really just a question of what are you hoping to get out of the plant? And then that can help steer you in the right direction for which compound you want to use.
I see. So that's helpful. So that's why people who are on chemotherapy use THC, because it helps with nausea. Got it. And
Absolutely.
It was helpful to hear you say that we're just at the tip of the iceberg of really understanding what the plant does, because I hope I'm not alone. I feel very confused by this. I've probably heard this explanation 15 times at this point, and I still feel like I don't really know what products to use. And I feel dubious about CBD products. And yet I hear people who are experts in the field and really know what they're talking about saying there are definitely there's definitely valuable properties here that can help with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm finding my way, and I imagine a lot of our listeners are probably too.
Yeah, there are a lot of, I think that it's good to be dubious, because there are, as with any category that experienced explosive growth, you attract bad actors that are in it to make a quick buck. And there have been many examples of products where they've done testing and it hasn't contained CBD at all, even though they're advertising that it does. Also, there are pharmaceuticals that now contain CBD, one in particular that's approved for a rare form of epilepsy. And the dosages in that pharmaceutical are, 100 times that of what you would get in a product that you would find of ours, for example. So it's understandable that you're confused, but there are multiple formats that you can get these products in. And what format you choose really, I think, just depends on what you're using it for. So our products are best known for being topical products. And we have, we actually did that by design, because when we started the company in 2015, fewer than 2% of Americans had heard of CBD. And we felt like it was just too much to ask of people to not only tell them, hey, here's this compound that comes from the cannabis plant that you haven't heard of, but also, why don't you try it, in an oil tincture that you might never use anyway. So our first product, and now our best-selling product, is a pain relief cream. And it's basically icy hot, but it's natural. It doesn't have any additives, no artificial fragrances or dyes or parabens. And then the CBD adds this anti-inflammatory benefit. And it used in the right quantities, it can also help with nerve.
Can you hold it up again a little closer? I want to see it. So it's Sagely Naturals. It's called
Relief and Recovery Cream.
Body Cream, 250 milligrams of CBD, and you can get it from Target.
This product is not a Target. So the products that we sell at Target are also pain relief topicals, but they do not contain CBD. So our products, our products are now sold in 20,000 stores across the country. So pretty much every drugstore, a lot of natural food stores, places like Sprouts, Target, and soon to be another retailer that you will have heard of, but I'm not allowed to say.
Great. Okay. All right. So we're going to come back to you about different forms, because I'm curious about that. Suzanne, what physiological changes happen during peri and menopause that would cause someone to reach for cannabis as a solution?
I mean, that's a great question. And I kind of want to, there's so many things to say here, because Kerrigan, you don't know me, but I'm also, I'm a trained herbalist. I have background in Ayurveda, and my partner is a cannabis grower. So I make all sorts of concoctions at home with the stuff we grow. So
I might want to correct something.
How do you even know
just
where
said.
to begin? Like, that's so fascinating, but like, you have a plant, like, what do you just like start?
Well, a lot of that for us, I'll just share with you guys our personal journey was that, during the pandemic, we looked at each other and we had pulled out, we were planning on planting anyways. When my kids were little, we always gardened. And then when he moved in, he was like, hey, let's garden. And then the pandemic happened. So we had nothing but time to garden. And then we looked at each other, and he was a lifelong pot smoker. And I was like, hey, we should grow some cannabis. I mean, really, that's what happened. And we got some, I mean, it's like a whole story. We got seeds, and he's just experimented, and he's that person. He's very meticulous. So he has, over the last 2.5 years, like really dug in and learned, and has really educated himself on a different level about the plants themselves. I already had a background in plant medicine, and I've always been very interested in growing medicinal plants. I was already growing herbs and things like that. And so I knew a little bit about making things and had that confidence, and then just started experimenting, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it's for our own use. We're not selling it.
Right.
So, you know, but I had the confidence to sort of dig in and understand how to approach that literature. And it is huge and very confusing. And thank you, Kerrigan, for like kind of boiling it down, because it's very hard for people to understand. And I do want to add a couple of things. I think it's confusing also because there's been this sea change. It went from marijuana, this is bad, this is a DEA scheduled drug, which it still is on the federal level. And that explains, by the way, why we are confused. Many of us grew up with this being something you were doing on the down low, getting in trouble for, or if you're a person of color, getting jailed over and going to jail for possession for 25 years.
Yeah.
Like really, like I don't think we can unwind the politics here, Nina. It's very, very important. Also, we don't have a lot of great long-term data because the federal government stymied research in the area, because this is a scheduled drug and on the federal level. So it's made it very, very hard to do research, which leads me to the answer to your question on how to use this plant. What are the various compounds? I think for our audience, what a lot of you don't realize is that 1 in 3-ish pharmaceutical drugs are derived at some point from a plant. So humans and plants have coexisted on the planet for the entire lifespan of human and plant existence.
I didn't know that. That's an awesome statistic. 1/3
aspirin,
of all
aspirin is willow bark. Okay. So what we do in pharma, what we do in empiric conventional Western science, is we take one little thing that maybe was being used traditionally. And this is another very important point, something we call the entourage effect. So when you use the entire plant together, you're getting all sorts of compounds interacting together, which is where the plant grew it this way. And maybe you're using the berry or the flower or the leaf or the root or the stem, and they can have different concentrations of different kinds of compounds. Traditionally, these were used over thousands of years. And, you know, you just trial and error figured out, oh, if I use this bark and I make a tea out of it, my headache goes away. So science comes in and has to find the exact compound, distills that out, figures out how to then manufacture that in a manufacturing plant and a factory, and mimics that chemical, and now you have aspirin. So this is the story of many, many different medications, and I think people don't necessarily know our history and our interaction, and I think that's really interesting and important. So when you politicize a plant that grows and that humans have used, it turns into a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is. I'm not here to say it's okay or not okay. There are things about it that have come out of it that I don't think are okay, but it is what it is. So we're in an interesting moment where things are transforming and there's more availability. And then people, of course, are confused and don't know how to discern the information, how to understand what's reliable, what's not. And I don't want to spend the whole time on this, but I think the context is super important. So that brings us to menopause and cannabis. This is
I appreciate that background. That's really great.
No, I'm happy to share it. I think it's really, I think people don't understand it enough, and it may help people understand why they have some concern, anxiety, judgment, whatever about it, and using something now that is new to us, that is actually ancient. Mm-hmm. So when we come to menopause, it's really interesting. You know, there's just not, because of this, there's not a lot of, first of all, we know there's not a lot of great literature on menopause anyways. Okay. So we've got that striking.
Right. We don't even know why hot flashes happen.
Right. We have the thermoregulatory zone. That's about all we know. Right. So we know that, well, you guys don't know, but you're about to know that not until 1993 did the FDA require women be involved in clinical trials of medication. That's right. 1993. I was just about to go to medical school. That's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy. Okay. So we don't even study women. So now we're like, oh, maybe we should study half the population. Okay. Oh, look at that. Women spend a third to a half of their lifetime menopause. Maybe we should think about that. I mean, we're literally just like taking baby steps, and now we throw in cannabis. So you can imagine why we don't have a lot of good data. When I started digging in, there's more and more interest, for obvious reasons, in reaching for something that feels like it's maybe more available and more benign for some people.
Right. Well, some people some people are afraid of hormones, and some people can't take them because they've had cancer, or
I'm one of those people.
Right. A lot of people want a natural solution.
Right.
I mean, I feel like most people I know are using some form, right? We're all using something for menopause, hopefully, right? Either we're on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, we're on antidepressants, we're taking sleeping pills, we're using cannabis, we're drinking too much. It's rare the person who is taking nothing for any of these symptoms,
right. So here's the interesting thing. We don't have a lot of good data on specific symptoms of perimenopause and menopause and the effect of cannabis. What we do have is more and more observational studies looking at who's reaching for these products and why are they reaching for them and are they helping. And it was very interesting. The quality of the data is not so great because these studies are observational. They're not the gold standard, right?
Does observational mean they're actually just anecdotal, or these are actual?
They're like interviewing people, or they're like, and finding out like, okay, did you ever use cannabis before? Have you used it for these symptoms? What happened? Or there are some very small studies. I'm talking like 10, 20 participants where they like gave them, like they had them smoke a joint essentially. And what happened? And they measured some things, and they're really limited. They're not looking at like the kind of stuff that Sagely makes. They're not like, does a topical cannabinoid with this terpene, I'm not even gonna go into that, work for joint pain and perimenopause? Like, we're not there yet.
Wow.
But what they really did find is, I know, but look, hopefully the clarion call, right? We're gonna, we're gonna still be out there like asking. What they did find is that when people had either used cannabis in the past, recreationally or otherwise, or were open to it and thought it would be helpful, they seemed to be helped by the use of it, which I think is really interesting. And I think says a lot about science, because I'm going to throw you another fact at you, which is that there's something called the, yes, it is trial and error, the placebo effect, right? We know placebo effect, but that's a real thing. And is that really a bad thing? I don't know. If you go into something and you expect it to be helpful and it helps you, I mean, is that bad? I don't really know. So that's what we have. Here's where and we were talking before we started, where I do see some really interesting information, and where I'm excited is in the vaginal dryness sexual health arena. So here's the deal. Kerrigan kind of touched on this. We know that there are strong anti-inflammatory benefits of all, in particular the cannabinoids, right? So this is the non-psychoactive. And we also know that we have receptors in our body that are ready for this particular plant, which is so interesting. There's receptors in the body waiting for that plant molecule to come in and fill them, and then they have downstream effects. We have a lot of them in the pelvic girdle.
Wait, can you back up and explain that one more time? This is where my knowledge of biology is really bad. We have receptors in the body, in our cells, that are waiting for cannabinoids.
Yeah.
And that's that endocannabinoid system.
That's that endocannabinoid system. So if you've never ingested any cannabinoid or smoked pot or anything, there's just like, I don't really understand like your body.
There are compounds in breast milk that mimic cannabinoids. Like these are compounds that we receive, not in the exact form that you will find them in cannabis, but very, very similar compounds in broccoli, in kale.
Thank you.
Breast milk. So yeah, these are compounds that our bodies were designed to receive.
Right. And they have various effects depending on what molecules occupying the receptor and where in the body it is acting. Okay.
Sorry.
So in your immune, that's thank you for, because otherwise it's going to be like over everybody's head.
Not a science student, so this is helpful. No, there are more of those receptors in the pelvic area.
There are a lot. There's a high concentration in the pelvic area, which is really interesting. So
but they're all over.
They're in your 100%. They're everywhere. They're in every part of your body. But now I'm talking about vaginas and stuff. So So yeah, it's in your brain. That's how it acts on the psychological or the psychoactive, what we call the psychoactive effects.
Oh, I see. Got it.
So here's where it's like, well, how can we use this to our benefit, right? So we know like the science, we have impacts on the immune system. We have impacts on inflammation, right? And we know that inflammation is a step required in a lot of chronic diseases. Inflammation is bad. We're just going to put it that way.
I'm clear on that.
There are anti-inflammatory effects. There's the obvious pain, joint pain we get, but also is there potential for decreased risk for certain kinds of cancers? I mean, there's a lot of ongoing research at the molecular level looking at these things. So here is where I think people are blindly reaching, and I understand why. Anxiety, depression, mood problems in general, sleep issues. So is it working or not? It's not really clear. Anecdotally, people definitely are having positive impacts. We don't have the science to support it so much. I'm very interested, particularly, like I said, in the sexual benefits in terms of both arousal, so like physical, like lubrication, blood flow, sensation, and desire.
I mean,
libido.
I feel like I know a lot of women who say
a lot of people use it, and there's anecdotally tons of evidence out there, and I think it also it's plausible biologically and scientifically. Are we there yet? I don't know. I mean, I actually spoke to a friend of mine earlier this morning who's a urologist who started a CBD-based lube company called Glissant. I'm gonna pitch them because I think it's a great product, and I think it's very science-based. And there is some interesting science that would indicate that lubes in particular that are high quality, that have other high quality ingredients and not a lot of preservatives and other things that are going to bother your vagina, could be helpful. I think there's a company called Foria that makes suppositories. The suppositories can be very helpful both for period cramps, which is another. There's a lot of these, unfortunately, we call them orphan conditions in women's health, pelvic pain, endometriosis, fibroids, menopause, sexual discomfort, right? There's all these areas that there's a lot of potential application here. So, and I've anecdotally had patients do great with these products for all of these reasons. Is the science really robust? It's not, but I'm hopeful.
The other company I'm going to mention in the chat is Hello Again, right? They make those vaginal
yes,
night and day that also seem great, and a lot of people swear by for overall health and sleep.
And these are things, just to remind you all, they're locally acting. So it's not like you're going to get high and be non-functional,
Right. Absolutely. I'm just writing something in the chat. Great. All right. So Kerrigan, your products are they're all topical, but now you have gummies. So can you tell us a little more, talk a little bit more about best ways to take in cannabis?
So what you use really should depend on what kind of effect you want. And there are also different speeds at which the products will affect you. So starting with, what everyone knows best when they think about cannabis, it's smoking. And that's a really fast, effective way to get cannabis into your bloodstream because it's going in through your lungs and you're processing it almost immediately. So I'll talk about this sort of in terms of fastest, most effective delivery methods down to slowest, probably least effective. Okay. The thing about smoking is, there's obviously the flower that you find at a dispensary or that you may be familiar with, in a joint. Harder to actually isolate compounds when you're smoking.
I was just about to say, people don't smoke CBD, do they?
There are vape pens. Yes, there are vape pens that are predominantly, a CBD distillate. And some people really like that, but it's a vape, it's not a flower. So it just depends on how you feel about smoking. Then there is an oil-based tincture, and we actually because of our acquisition, just launched our first tincture. It was not something we felt comfortable doing pre-acquisition because we had never really invested in the quality that needs to go into providing a really high quality tincture product. So a tincture is either an oil or an alcohol based suspension that you hold under your tongue for 30 to 60 seconds. I don't love that experience personally. They don't usually taste that great. But it is really effective and fast because the skin under your tongue gets to your bloodstream really quickly. So also very effective.
And just to be clear, with tinctures, you can also do just CBD, high THC.
Yeah.
You do a hemp tincture?
Yes. So our tinctures are derived from hemp, and it is what we would call like a CBD concentrate, but it is not an isolate. So there are terpenes, there are other cannabinoids in the product, but there is no THC. So, for all of our products, we've actually extracted the THC out because for our consumers, that is something that they're looking for. They just want the peace of mind to know that they're not going to get high.
Right.
With that said, there are a lot of great reasons why you might want THC in a product. If you're using cannabis for insomnia, for example, like there is a great 1-2 punch that THC and CBD can provide.
Or for snacks, like you might want a little bit of THC.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you might want the psychoactive.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think they potentiate each other. They interact with each other in a way. That's what I was talking about with this entourage effect. Yeah. And I think, anyways, we could get really in the nitty gritty. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but people need to understand, like, I really want to try to remove the value judgments that people may have around this, and understand that we're talking about compounds that impact each other and how they're going to impact you. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
I actually don't think
super helpful.
I would challenge that there are value judgments at this point. Like, we've done some consumer insights and people are a lot less judgy about THC than I thought that they would be. And this was even 7 years ago when we were starting the company. The big thing is that a lot of people just don't like the feeling of being high. So it's not that they think that it's illegal or that it's wrong. It's actually just that they don't like feeling high. I
feel that way too. Also, Kerrigan, how old are you?
I'm 36.
So you're a little younger than us. So I think it's also a generational thing. Like Suzanne and I are more the same age. So we feel the leftover, a little bit more of that judgment. I mean, that makes sense. But I agree with you. Like, I feel like when I smoke a joint, I know how it feels. I don't want to walk around feeling that all the time. No. Would I love something that helps me with sex or help? Yes, that would be really fun. I can just never figure out the right product. I have another stupid question. I know you've answered this already, but I still don't understand it. So in your products, Kerrigan, what would be the difference between a hemp tincture and a CBD tincture?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking that. So hemp is the plant and CBD is a compound that comes from the hemp plant. So it is the same thing. CBD comes from hemp. Our tinctures are CBD hemp tinctures.
Okay.
But CBD is just the compound that's derived from the hemp plant.
Hemp is bigger than CBD.
Cannabis is the plant family. Okay. And then hemp is, think about it like citrus.
Yep.
Here's the lemon.
Yep.
I think of like THC is like an orange cannabis is the plant, the citrus, marijuana is the orange, hemp is the lemon. And then, you get your vitamin C from both. Like, vitamin C is actually the compound that's derived from.
I love that. I'm totally using that. That was the best analogy ever.
That was that
was great.
Back 7 years ago, I talked about that analogy quite a bit.
Perfect.
But
okay, so smoking, then tincture.
Smoking, tincture, and then through the skin, I would say, is sort of the third most effective. It might not seem like it, but because the skin is our largest organ, because we have these pores, it's a really effective way to deliver particularly localized effects of the cannabinoids. So when we're talking about things like the Foria lube product, like, there's a reason why that's effective. It's because it's applied directly to the vagina, or for our relief and recovery cream, it is applied, to the site where you're feeling discomfort. And so it can have localized effects. The least effective, I think, is actually any type of ingestion. So if you're taking a capsule, or if you're eating something, or if you're drinking something, it has to go through your digestive tract, which breaks down a lot of what's in the product. So you're ultimately absorbing less than you think you are. And it takes a lot longer for it to break down, and it's in your system longer. So that could be seen as a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you're looking for.
I will say that one of the biggest complaints I get in terms of sleep issues in this age group is staying asleep. And so actually, this is where a really high quality edible is good, because a lot of people will fall asleep. What they need is that 4 or 5 hours later. So
totally
I do
agree.
think, but you're right. I mean, the problem becomes the quality, the dose. People really understand. And also, again, trial and error, because you might take something that's great and now you're really groggy at 7 when you try to wake up. So, but just to put that out there.
I do just have to say, sleep is one of those areas. So we have some dedicated sleep products that are CBD only. However, there are reasons for sleep specifically to use both THC and CBD. CBD does not put you to sleep, but it does help to keep you asleep, whereas THC can actually make you sleepy. So to compensate for that, our products have melatonin, which help you feel more sleepy, but yeah, they do work in concert together.
Interesting. All right. Well, that was really helpful, because I definitely would have thought that it was smoking, tincture, ingestion, and then creams. I would not have thought that creams was that thinking about it. So when I think about these vaginal suppositories or creams like yours, I've been having a lot of neck and shoulder pain. Should I try a cream like yours? Would that help?
I think so. Yes. I mean, I use these products all the time. I actually also have endometriosis, which is how I came to this category. I started using CBD because I had chronic lower back pain. And when I tried CBD for the first time, it was a life-changing experience. And I couldn't find any products that I felt like were trustworthy or that had a brand that I wanted to use. And hence Sagely was born 7 years ago. But I use the topical products for localized pain. And then I also take CBD every day for the anti-inflammatory benefits.
Wow, good for you. That's
a really good point too. I want to bring that up, because I think people, when you talk about plant medicine or herbal products, what we're used to grabbing the Tylenol, episodic use. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Kerrigan, and thank you for sharing your story, because one of the things that I've learned in talking to experts in the field is just that, in a way, for some of these big umbrella items like inflammation, we need to start thinking about this more as a daily supplement. It's not really going to work very well if you just, I'm having the pain, let me take it now, and then, it didn't work. Well, but that's not actually the way it works. It needs to, achieve a certain level in our system. We need to have a steadier state.
It's like taking calcium for stronger bones.
Right.
Or I was thinking, or if you take Prozac, you need to also build it up and keep it steady.
Yeah.
So Kerrigan, may I ask what you take? What CBD product do you ingest every day for that?
Yeah. So if I'm making a smoothie, or if it's a breakfast that I don't mind adding, a dropper full of oil to, I'll add our tincture product. We have an unflavored version. It has it's not flavorless, it's unflavored. So CBD and cannabis in general has, I think, it kind of tastes like tea. It is like an herbal flavor. More regularly, I'll take just our capsules, which have hemp and turmeric. I would have taken the turmeric anyway.
This is also where I get a little confused. So you're taking that for inflammation, but do you think it also helps for anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, it works exactly the same way in whatever form or additives you put in the product. So I'll be the first person to admit that even though we have We have a version of this product, like the soft gels with ashwagandha, which we market as the stress version of the product. But the CBD works exactly the same way in both of the products. It's just that we add turmeric to one and ashwagandha to the other.
Got it. That's helpful. And then in both cases, really, it's the CBD that's the active ingredient. I mean, not that turmeric and ashwagandha aren't probably helpful, but you should look at them exactly the same way, which is, exactly what Dr. Suzanne has been saying, is they're both herbal supplements. Like, they're both plant-based derivatives. Sorry, I don't mean to be skeptical. Like, I totally believe in plant medicine. I just get a little like, suddenly everyone's taking turmeric and then you don't really know how much to take and you don't know if it's doing anything.
Well, and also you don't know the quality, but actually the data for turmeric is very, very robust. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too far afield, but you have to be careful also. Quality, where is it coming from, how much it can interact with other medications. This is where we have, like, I have many criticisms of the way our federal government monitors this stuff, but the FDA has certain standards, and the supplement world also has standards. That DSHEA exists. But it's a different standard and it's a little looser. And this is why having quality products that we can stand behind is so important, because the field is huge and anybody can come in making any claim. But I will say that, but the science, if you back it to the science, ashwagandha and turmeric have plenty of data to support their use.
Yeah, I've taken ashwagandha for a while and I've taken turmeric. Kerrigan, would you mind putting in the chat the exact name of that tincture for inflammation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also just want to say, like, Dr. Suzanne is right, and you should look for quality. If you're planning to use cannabis products, there are things you can ask for to verify the quality. For my space specifically, there are, COAs, certificates of analysis, where you can actually see that, for example, when we say that there's 20 milligrams, per soft gel, you want to verify that when it's tested, there are actually 20 milligrams per soft gel. You want to know that there are no residual pesticides or heavy metals. During the extraction process, a lot of added chemicals can get added back in. So these are things that you should verify. Like, don't just trust that the company is doing the hard work, because it's really expensive to do these tests. So there are a lot of companies that will just take the shortcut.
Right. So that brings me to my last question, really, is like, how many people actually do that, and how do you do that? Like, what are your trusted sources for information on the cannabis industry? Like, if someone really wants to be serious about this, who do you look to for information? Sorry if that's a question.
Yeah, so I'm going to make sure that the site is still around, but for a long time, there was a site called projectcbd.org, which aggregates all of the available medical research, NIH research that's been done on cannabis for very specific conditions. So when I've gotten questions that I don't know the answer to about, hey, I would like to use cannabis for XYZ, in the past, I've sent people to this site, and it looks like it's still up and running.
That's helpful. I mean, it's so valuable having you guys here to ask questions too. I appreciate
do you guys use USP the way other like supplements? There are a couple of like sort of outside organizations that also, I guess you would know more about this than I do, that the nutraceutical supplement companies can go to have outside verification. And I think, some of those are probably more meaningful than others. And I feel like Kerrigan could answer that more, but these are other ways that people can at least verify that there's some standardization and testing, because it is really hard. And I mean, here I am sitting here and I'm like, I'm a medical advisor for Kindra. It's because I understand the product. I understand how they make it, and I believe in them. And I, but who am I, right? So it gets a little sticky out there.
It's definitely tricky with supplements of all kinds. And, some things work. I mean, I take magnesium every day. really is great for me, melatonin, whatever. It's all just different for everyone, and the product is different, and where you get it is different. I do try and only buy my supplements at really good health food stores, figuring that they're probably doing some of the research. Like, I don't buy stuff anymore like CVS. I just figure that's probably crappy. Well, it's been so great talking to you guys. Please, if there are any questions in the audience, this is your last choice. I'm going to go through a couple things that I stuck in the chat. Use the promo code menopause20 at sagelynaturals.com for 20% off anything on the website. I'm going to go order your cream and try and use it, because I didn't know that it's like that effective. I mean, it made me think. I used to use a magnesium cream to help sleep, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm gonna be less dubious. That's awesome. Head to Kindra for alternative natural solutions to menopause and use promo code Revel20. Kindra's awesome. We love their products. There's a bath soak that I'm particularly fond of right now that's really gentle on your vaginal skin. Pre-order Suzanne's book. We're going to be talking about this book a lot over the next 6 months. Menopause Bootcamp. There's a link in the chat. It's Harper Wave. She's great and knows a lot, and I'm sure it's going to be really, really good. I haven't read it yet, but I'm psyched too. Please, if you're new to Revel on here, please come to Revel, www.hellorevel.com. It's completely free. We have thousands and thousands of events and groups and communities, and we have an app, and you can find friends and talk to people and ask questions. It's really an incredible resource. And then a last question. Sorry if you mentioned this already, but are there any long-term side effects? It's a very good question, Dawn, from using CBD over a long time.
I'm happy to answer, but I'd also love to know Dr. Suzanne's answer.
I'm not aware of any. I mean, I think that there's, again, I think we're just starting to look at this and understand it. It's hard for me to understand where the problem would be. I think when you look at THC, there's some confusing data out there, because habitual, whatever that means, users and people who are really heavy users, especially of tobacco, the smoking, not tobacco, there is some data indicating that it can have some negative effects cognitively, but we're talking about like heavy, constant use over a very long period of time. So we don't really know yet, but I don't have a lot of suspicion or concern about like long-term negative side effects of other cannabinoids. And I don't have a big problem with THC either, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a little bit overstated. I do. Because I mean, if you look at it versus alcohol or opioids, really? Yeah. Well, alcohol is really bad for you, actually, like really bad. And we know this.
Yeah. That's what my kids say.
With the clinical trials that they did of the CBD pharmaceutical product, there were very few negative side effects. And one interesting thing about CBD as opposed to THC is that it does not develop a tolerance over time. So whereas if you are smoking a joint every day, for a year, you may need more to get high. With CBD, once you've found your dosage, that's your dosage. What I will say though, is that it is processed through your liver. And so there may be complications with certain medications. And this is always where I'm the most frustrated in these kinds of conversations, is because what I want to say is talk to your doctor, but they don't know either. So you can tell your doctor, I'm starting to take CBD. Is that going to affect my blood pressure medication? And I would be really surprised if they could confidently tell you the answer to that. So it's just something to be aware of at this point.
There are some societies starting to develop, like the Society of Cannabis Physicians. There are a couple of organizations that really are trying to clean it up in terms of aggregating data and training clinicians. And those would be places to look and see if there are some, I'm sure there's public facing information. But I think you might also get a lot of judgment from your doctors. I really think you might. I had a trusted colleague who I send a lot of people to. One of our mutual patients told me that she said to her, "Oh, you're doing CBD, stop that." And I was like, based on what? Like, wow. I know you don't know anything about it. And she didn't say, no, I mean, really. And it's like she said, you know what? I don't know. Let's check it out. Which is a really different response.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. That definitely happens.
And that scares people.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. All right. Really, the last question is, does CBD help with brain fog?
I wish. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Please give it to me.
I don't know
I don't
either.
know.
I mean,
I don't
as
think
we
we
go
know.
back to the beginning of the conversation, a lot of this is trial and error, which is hard and frustrating, because I think women spend a lot. I mean, I do feel like I spent 5 full years in perimenopause into menopause trying to figure out what worked. And so now I'm at this place where I feel like I'm on a regimen that works and I don't really want to mess with it. But
What worked?
for me, it's been the combination of
Yeah.
HRT and Prozac, which I'd been on and off all throughout my 20s and 30s. So I kind of knew Prozac worked for me. So I went back on it, and I'm on a low dose HRT, and I take magnesium and I take vitamin D. And yeah, so far so good. Although I was just diagnosed with osteopenia, like it sounds like everyone has. So now and I eat so much calcium, I don't even know what to do. And they
You
don't
gotta
seem
do weight bearing.
I know I need to do more. I mean, I do it, but clearly I need to do more.
Yeah.
So Monica doesn't see the link to the tincture, so we'll stick it in one more time, Monica. And thank you guys so much. This was just really, I feel like I feel like this was a science lesson for me, and I'm getting better at this, and learning more. What else can I ask? I'm going to check out Sagely Naturals. Suzanne, if you have a good sex solution product that you love, please tell
Oh
me.
yeah. Yeah. So Glissant, which I think is just GLISSANT.com. I'm too lazy to apparently figure this
Okay.
out.
I got it.
And Foria. I think it's their website is Foria for Wellness, FORIA. So if you can put that
Okay.
in. I think those are two that I know the companies, I know how they're manufactured, I know the founders, and I think that they are actually also trying to advance the science. And that's one of the reasons, like, this is why I love Kindra as well. Like, there's really an attempt to understand the science, to share that with others, and to advance it. It's not just like making a buck, and so I love Kerrigan's approach as well for that reason. I'm a science geek at heart, and I feel really strongly about us moving things forward. That's what's going to heal us.
And I think that is the answer, since we're kind of acknowledging that it's a lot of trial and error. It's really super important that you start to understand the brands and, find people that you really trust. I completely agree.
Yeah. And ask for the COAs. Like if you don't see them readily available on the website, that's probably a red flag. Ask the customer service team.
Kerrigan, tell them what the COA is.
Oh, that's the certificate of analysis. That's the piece of paper from the lab that verifies that what a company has on the label is in fact true. And it's so important for cannabis products because these products are like hemp and cannabis are very, very reactive to the environment in which they're grown. So and actually that's one of the reasons why they're such a great plant for the environment, is because they will suck up all of the heavy metals and the bad stuff in the soil, but bad for you as the person using the plant, because it cleans up the soil, but then it takes it for its own. So really important to be verifying that the cannabis products you're using are being tested. You should be looking that there are no heavy metals, that there are no pesticides, and that it contains the amount of cannabinoids that they're advertising.
Great. Thank you everyone so much. So this will be available on the Raging Gracefully podcast. Thank you so much to our friends at Kindra for sponsoring it. We love you. Thank you, Kerrigan. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you to the audience. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Nina, for having us. That was awesome.
Take care.